My most memorable Thanksgiving was during the Second World War, and my grandma always had Thanksgiving at her house, of course, and we had the big feast, and she cooked her heart out, and we were just sitting down to dinner, and the doorbell rang, and I had 3 uncles who were in the Army in World War II. 2 were in Europe and 1 was in the Pacific, and it was one of my uncles that was stationed in Europe that had gotten a leave and came home on Thanksgiving Day. And it's a good thing my grandma had already finished the meal, because if it wouldn't have been finished, she would have been done for. And of course, everybody was just ecstatic. That was the most wonderful Thanksgiving I can remember, so that all of our family, or most of our family, was able to be together. And you never forget that.
Going back in time, back in Germany, just briefly after the World War II, we didn't really have Thanksgiving as such. So what we celebrated was an Erntedankfest, or the thanks for the harvest. So the farmers would gather some of the goods and bring it to church in order for the priest to be able to bless it. After all the ceremonies and so on, the harvest, whatever they had, was being donated to an old people's home, which was run by the church and so on, and all the nuns and so on. So it's really slightly different, but the purpose is pretty much the same.
One time I bounced a goose on the floor. We were gonna have company, but it wasn't on Thanksgiving. But it was so funny. They bounced a goose, and it bounced, and the company was in the kitchen. So we just wiped it off and ate it anyway.
My fondest Thanksgiving memories have to do with my family when I was growing up, and we would sit around the table and it would be full of the most wonderful food. And my father would always say a blessing and then ask each of us, my sisters and I, to talk about something we were grateful for. And we went around the table and we really had good conversations about what we as children felt was important in our lives and what we were grateful for. And I've tried to carry that on with my own family. But I also have a really funny memory from my professional life. On Thanksgiving a few years ago, I was working in an organization in Michigan, and on Thanksgiving evening, I had a call from the administrator of the nursing home that we were involved with, and he was cracking up laughing, telling me the story about how during dinner on Thanksgiving evening, a huge turkey flew through the window, broke the window in the dining room, and ran around. And all the residents were having dinner, and this huge turkey was running around in the dining room, and no one knew what to do, but there was a family visiting their loved one, and they were dressed in their hunting camouflage outfits because they were turkey hunters. And they did not hurt this turkey, but they just knew exactly what to do. They got some kind of gear, and they ran in and scooped up this bird and threw it back out. But that story is still getting told in that building. People just never forgot that Thanksgiving night and that wild turkey that flew into the dining room.
I would say my most memorable Thanksgiving was the year that my niece Kayla was born. She was born 2 days before Thanksgiving, and I just remember how excited we all were to add her to our family, and I'm her godmother, and she's getting married in June, so lots of good memories. But so I remember the year she was born, and also being so thankful for a big family, because no matter whose house we had it at, we'd start in the kitchen with the table and extend it, into the living room to get everybody around the table. And it's a blessing to have so many family members and so many people that I love.
I think the most memorable was the first Thanksgiving with my wife. And we happened to were unable to find a place to rent when we came home from our honeymoon, and we ended up living with my mother and father. And we had a Thanksgiving at my mother's house.
My mother had 10 children, and every Thanksgiving they would come for dinner on Sunday. And it was, well, the 10 as kids, and then if they were married, of course, the wife would come along, or husband, and it made it even larger. I don't know how my mother did it, but she sure made a good dinner. And after dinner, the guys would talk, and then they would go in the living room and play dice. And they shoot a little dice. And that was fun too. And I was pretty young at the time, and they would let me shoot once in a while. But we had a good time, and I miss it very much now that we don't.
I can't recall the exact year, but we wound up with 17 people at a last minute meal. Fortunately, I had enough dishes, silverware, etc., to feed everybody. I'd ordered a 20-pound turkey, wound up with a 24, which was fine, and an extra bag of stuffing mix, so an extra pan of stuffing was made. We already had a large casserole of green bean casserole, mashed potatoes. The only thing we ran short on were pumpkin pies. And there was no way I could make another pumpkin pie at the last minute. But we did have enough. We had apple and pumpkin, so everybody got a piece of dessert. But it was chaos for a little while, but it was a United Nations meal. We had people from Korea, a fellow whose mother came from Bermuda, and of course the rest of us were from here. Had a long table, had to scrounge up 2 card tables and chairs. Fortunately, the neighbors were home. But it was just a great day.